Homestay Mengkuang Titi, which can also be known as Desa Homestay Mengkuang Titi, is situated in Mengkuang Titi, 14,000 Bukit Mertajam seberang perai tengah Pulau Pinang. It is a homestay under the management of the Kampung Mengkuang Titi community in seberang perai Pulau Pinang. In addition, guests also have the opportunity to participate in various agricultural and cultural activities such as paddy plantation, coconut picking from trees, visiting Mengkuang Dam, rubber tapping, and making Malay delicacies such as kuih bahulu and satay. With a harmonious homestay atmosphere and interesting activities carried out at Mengkuang Titi Homestay, it is believed to have succeeded in attracting the interest of many people, including tourists from abroad.
The majority of Homestay Mengkuang Titi's tourists came from Europe, Japan, Korea, and Singapore. This homestay also received a number of German tourists in 2018 before the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. On 26 September 2018, the homestay welcomed the arrival of tourists from Germany and the United Kingdom in conjunction with the Malaysia Cool Mini RTC Carnival. In summary, Homestay Mengkuang Titi is a very popular destination for visitors from Korea, Japan, Germany, Singapore, and the United Kingdom because of its uniqueness and privilege in the culture, traditional arts, and life of the local community. What is social interaction? Social interaction is a process that involves reciprocal stimulation or response between two or more individuals. Social interaction includes the development of cooperation and competition, the influence of status and social roles, the dynamic of group behavior, leadership, and conformity. Persistent social interaction between specific individuals lead to the formation of social relationships. Now, let's see the differences in behavioral elements of social interaction. The Malaysian culture in greeting. First, Malaysians greet visitors by placing their right hand over the left chest. Second, handshaking called salam is also the typical greeting for Malaysian. Third, men should not shake hands with women unless the women extend their hands first. Next, the gesture is also used when saying goodbye. Lastly, Malay should be addressed with a Mr., Mrs. or Miss first, followed by the family name. The Korean culture in greeting. First, Koreans do not wave hands to say hello or bye to the senior. Second, in Korea, bowing shows courtesy. Third, use a person's formal title when addressing them for the first time. Next, handshaking is also the typical greeting. Lastly, keep in mind, Koreans hold hands softly, not tightly. The Japanese culture in greeting. First, in Japan, the most common gesture in greeting is a bow. Second, generally bowing is a mark of respect and emphasizes social rank between people. Third, speaking while bowing is considered rude. Next, when bowing, people do not make direct eye contact but rather look at their counterpart's neck or chin. Lastly, nonetheless, many Japanese are understanding and are likely to shake hands when meeting non-Japanese people. The differences in verbal communication of social interaction. The Malaysian culture in verbal communication. First, Malaysians rely on non-verbal communication such as facial expression, tone of voice, and body language. Second, such a communication style tends to be subtle and indirect. Third, Malay may hint at a point rather than making a direct statement, since that might cause the other person to lose face. Next, Malaysians may laugh when they are embarrassed as a defense mechanism. Consider that it can indicate their unease. Lastly, do not show anger in public as it makes Malaysians uncomfortable and create a feeling of powerlessness. The Korean culture in verbal communication. First, the South Korean communication pattern is generally indirect and quite verbose. Second, pausing before giving a response indicates that someone has applied appropriate thought and consideration to the question. Third, A South Korean preoccupation with saving face and politeness means that they will seldom give a negative response. Next, laughter is sometimes used in awkward situations. Lastly, South Koreans generally speak quite firmly and use less gesture and facial expression. The Japanese culture in verbal communication. First, Japanese people are generally indirect communicators. As indirect communicators, Japanese people often avoid direct refusal or negative response. Next, interrupting someone who is talking is generally considered impolite. Next, interjections are common in Japan. They are not understood as an interruption, instead indicating to the speaker that their counterpart is actively listening. Lastly, humbleness is a common value in Japanese culture. Excessive complimenting may cause embarrassment. Next, the differences in nonverbal communication of social interaction. The Malaysian culture in nonverbal communication. First, it is generally inappropriate to touch strangers in Malaysia. Second, avoid pointing with your index finger and use your open hand instead. Third, Malaysians generally avoid holding direct eye contact with people of the opposite gender out of modesty. Next, people non-verbally say "excuse me" when entering or leaving or passing people by bowing slightly. Lastly, placing one's hand on their hip or in their pocket during conversation indicates anger. The Korean culture in non-verbal communication. First, Koreans are generally not very physically affectionate with one another. Second, as well as expression of glee and humor, smiling can indicate that one is feeling ashamed or embarrassed. Third, during a discussion or friendly conversation, make full eye contact with the person you are talking to. Next, use two hands or your right hand alone to offer or receive something. Lastly, sneezing is considered rude in Korea. It is best practice to excuse yourself from the room if you have to. The Japanese culture in non-verbal communication. First, minimal physical contact is preferred. Second, attitude towards space are often based on a distinction between public and private space. Third, indirect eye contact is the norm, as direct eye contact may be interpreted as intimidating. Next, bowing is common throughout Japan and is often used as a gesture to mark certain emotion, such as showing gratitude. Lastly, it is common for people to nod during conversation to indicate they are listening or as a sign of acknowledgement.
Both visitors and hosts can learn more about diverse cultures, beliefs, and values. This can assist to widen individuals' horizons, to think in new ways, and to be more unbiased and rational. It also emphasizes that traveling brings people together, and because tourism includes an educational component, it may help people comprehend each other's cultures and promote cultural awareness between hosts and guests. As a result, people have a better possibility of developing mutual sympathy and understanding as well as reducing prejudice.